right, welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Are the Kings for real tonight? We're going to be getting into that. We're talking about the key wins. We're going to be talking about Q getting his first points, is Turcotte's injury, something to be worried about. So get in the chat, like and subscribe. You know what to do. Let's go. All right, the intro song was brought to you by Ezera, their new song Blind out now, anywhere you listen to music. And this podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where you go to get our tickets here at THPN. I know it's exciting. The Kings are playing well. You might want to go see them against Vancouver. Well, Game Time has you covered. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, that makes tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Filters out all the fluff to show you the incredible deals on the great seats so you don't have to waste time searching thousands of tickets. So I'm cracking open the app now. I'm like, oh, man, there's a super hot deal, $38 to see the game tomorrow. Or if you want to sit lower level and see the Kings shoot twice on that side of the ice, $86 for lower level to go see them versus the Canucks. So plenty of options for you here at Game Time, and that's why they got you covered. Super easy deals. You can view your seats before you buy. Lowest price guaranteed. Event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all the whole nine. Curation makes it easier to save up for more, save more on sports, comedy, theater, anything you want to use Game Time for. All in pricing, so that way you're not getting stumped with those fees at checkout. Like again, seat views, panoramic, so you know exactly where you're going to be sitting. I know there's not many block seats in hockey, but if you want to use it for a baseball game, you don't want to be sitting behind a pole. Lowest price guaranteed. Credit you up to 100% of the difference if the price changes. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Well, all you have to do is download the Game Time app now. Create an account. Use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code THPN for 20% off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. It's our time, boys. To get into the Kings. Kings are buzzing. We're buzzing. It's time to talk about some good hockey. But before we jump into that, Joe, Russ, how you guys doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. It's been an interesting week. Sports teams that I tend to root for have had a pretty fun week for me, so I'm excited there. But I am adjusting to daylight savings time. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm not a huge fan of it. Getting dark at 5 o'clock. Yeah, not for me. So it's been an adjustment. I'm sure it is for everybody else. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm all right. I mean, I don't know. I'm maybe it's just because I'm used to it. Like I don't have a problem with it because I do. I was thinking about this. I know there's always a conversation about it, but won't it in another month? And I guess it depends where you live. But I feel like around where I am, like the sun may not rise until like 8:30 if we didn't do this. Like after if we didn't do this, right? Wouldn't it'd be pretty late in the morning? It'd be all dark. I don't know. It's just fine the way it is. I feel like I'm just used to. We grow up and I get out of the rink and it's pitch black after practice at 5:30 and whatever you're gonna do. It is what it is. Head home and that's that.
I am an early morning guy, so it is nice having the sun in the morning. So
yeah,
I'll say that.
If my kids sleep past 6, that's late. So it's brutal. So I'd rather have a little sunshine a little earlier if I can to help me get up.
It's always the sunshine at the night. It's always nice. You know, I get off of work and then the girls home and sometimes we go for a walk or whatever. Now it's just pitch black, but
yeah,
you know, it is what it is. I mean, it's part of the time zone there. Gwen's like, hey, I grew up in AC, you know, no time change not needed. That must be nice. You know, so
I still don't understand that, by the way.
How one state doesn't do it? Yeah.
Anybody?
No.
I don't. Okay, because I don't know. I genuinely don't understand that. But
Crickets. If I had a cricket button, I'd probably press it there. But yeah, Kings going well, and it's fun to talk about the team when they're winning. It's been kind of a weird week. I mean, the games we said they should win got either they lost or they got pushed to overtime, and they lost in overtime. And then the games that we thought were going to be, tough ones, a different Kings team shows up to play. Like, it's been kind of a weird couple of weeks with this team, but handily, I think it's probably the most consistent hockey they've played over the last 3 games. Russ, what have you seen? What's different from this Kings team over the last couple of days?
I don't know what's different. But there is a difference, definitely. I mean, it feels so night and day from the game that they lost in San Jose, and ever since then, it feels like they've just flipped the switch. And I mean, after that San Jose game, there's very few games where I'm just like so pissed off of just like the team performance. Yeah, you can be upset about a loss, maybe, but at least like, I don't know, they give some good effort. But even in that game in San Jose, I was so mad and so frustrated because it just felt like they didn't care. If like you knew this team was so much better, and yeah, you're always supposed to beat San Jose. Sometimes bad teams beat good teams. It happens, but even then, it just felt like they didn't give any effort. But ever since that game, going from Vegas, even Chicago, and these last 2 games, you've seen this team kind of just turn things around and just all of a sudden be this team that I think a lot of people, maybe if you thought very highly of this team, if you're very kind of positive about the outlook of this team, this is what we expected, or this is what they probably expected. And we're seeing it pay dividends. I mean, 2-0-1 in the last 3, or 3-0-1 now, going back to Vegas after the San Jose game. And the Chicago game, a lot of people were upset. Yeah, you want to be upset. You lose a 2-goal lead, 3-2 lead in the third period. I thought even that performance was pretty good. But then you come and then you carry that to the back-to-back, which, like you said, Brandon, but nobody was really expecting them to perform pretty well or even come out with 4 points out of those 2 games. You're able to get 2 out of Nashville, and you go into Minnesota, who's looked like world beaters to start the year. They haven't lost in regulation at home. And sure enough, the Kings pretty much dominated him throughout the entire game, I thought. I mean, the early parts of that first period maybe looked a little bit more on Minnesota's edge, but the second and third period, it was all LA Kings. And it just like makes you believe again. And I don't know if it's a good thing as a Kings fan, because we think like we were having these conversations last year after they had that outstanding road start. And now it seems like, I mean, it's only 2 games and it's a back-to-back, but even then, like you watch the way they play, and now those start to creep into your head again and maybe give you a little bit more of a glass half full outlook for LA.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about that earlier. Like, we were having these same conversations. We sat here probably a year ago, almost to the day, saying, "Are we cup contenders?" And we're talking about it, and it's like, you know what? They might be. I don't know. I go back to the Chicago game for a second. I agree. I thought they played well. That's a game that I should probably be more frustrated with, because you blew a 2-goal third period lead, and then you took another lead, and then you still blew it. Like, that's kind of normally a frustrating game. I don't know why I didn't get as frustrated. Maybe it's the loser point these days where you still walk away with something that, I don't know. I should have been more upset about it, but the way they bounced back, that's a tough back-to-back in Nashville and in Minnesota, and to play the way that they played. I thought Minnesota, but I thought, like you said, I totally agree. That was a great second and third period. And I thought the Nashville game was almost vintage Kings, where it just felt like they smothered Nashville. Like, Nashville had nowhere to go. They had no room on the ice, really. They didn't generate much. And they were just that was like the structured Kings, different, a little bit different, because there's not that strict 1-3-1 per se, but they still played within a structure, and it felt like that. And it really felt like Nashville struggled to get anything really going. The penalty kill, especially that game, I don't know that Nashville really ever got set up on the 3 power plays that they had. So on the whole, Randon, you're looking at 3 three really good games. You could argue. I mean, they got the 2 points in Vegas. They probably played better in the games after. I referenced Brandon when we talked about it last Friday. Andrew Knoll using the word opportunistic or efficient, I think it was, for Vegas. I mean, I don't know that they played as well against Vegas as they did these last two games, but they were much more efficient. They buried their chances. But, at the team level, really good stuff to see. Continued 5-on-5 dominance, maybe some signs of hope with the special teams. So all in all, I wouldn't have guessed that they'd be 8-3-3 first in the Pacific at this point, but here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, it was kind of like you said, vintage Keegs against Nashville, and then we got some vintage performances. I even got to bust out the old Lewis. I don't know if I've ever told you guys that my family always pronounces his name like that out of just comedic affair, like Lewis. So when he scored it, I shouted it out of instinct. But yeah, it was just nice. And then Q gets off the schneid. Trevor Lewis with a couple nice goals. The team, it just seemed like the passes were hitting. There's some of those games with the Kings. It's like, man, can we just complete a pass, please? Like just one stick-to-stick pass. And both the last couple games, it just seems like I didn't have any of those frustrations. So it's nice to see that maybe this is the apex of what this team could play like, and I think, okay, well, maybe we get Doughty back. Is Doughty, what does he add to this team? And, the cup contender thing, maybe we're going to talk about how real we do think this team is. But to me, it was just nice to watch some good hockey, like for multiple nights in a row, not get frustrated, just kind of be able to sit back and enjoy the sport that we love to watch. So,
I mean, yeah, that empty net goal that they scored in Nashville was just like picture perfect. The outlet pass, cross ice pass by Kopitar to set things up to Gavrikov cross ice, and then it was tic tac toe. I forget who got the second puck, and I know Kempe buried the empty.
I think it was Lewis.
Was it Lewis? Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it was perfect. Like
it was Lewis.
The Nashville game. It was just like suffocating, like Joe said. Like just the Kings were just on top of Nashville. And, I mean, how many times was it last year that we saw like players just break their sticks over the bench because of how well the Kings played? And just like that, after the Nashville game, you have Ryan O'Reilly coming out and saying to the media that he played probably one of the worst games he's ever played in his career. And like that's what we heard from this Kings team at the start of last year. And so it's like, okay, like when you see things and you hear things like that and you see the way they play with the connecting of the passes and everything seems so cohesive, that's where you see the potential. You see, okay, Jim Hiller, that's what they talked about. I mean, maybe we haven't seen that uncomfortability, maybe a little bit more physical, but yeah, I thought that game was a little bit more physical. To have the fights. Maybe the Kings didn't fare too well in those fights, but it certainly feels like whenever you watch these Nashville Kings games, the last few years at least, like there's been some uptick in physicality. And I was kind of hoping that it would maybe wake up the Kings a little bit. And it seems like it did. Like it got the Kings a lot more engaged. I love the videos that the Kings are sharing after the game of Hiller kind of giving a little speech to the team and the driver of the game with the Yuki Tsunoda hat or helmet or whatnot. But I love that. Like that's like almost an immediate kind of recap of the coach to the players of what he saw and what they need to do and what they did well in order to get the 2 points. And he was spot on. It was just like there's a physicality. That was a game. That was a real. I think he said that was like a hockey game. And you guys answered the bell, and it certainly felt that way. So, I mean, to see that physical aspect get kicked up a notch against Nashville, who's certainly pressing. I mean, they're desperate for wins, and we'll talk about Nashville and what they're going through. I mean, that's not an easy game to play. And then, like Joe said, to go up and have that travel to go to Minnesota, a team that has been playing so well at the start of the year, like everybody was kind of like, or at least myself, I was thinking like, hey, if they lose this game, whatever. I mean, they got 2 points in Nashville. Seems like a scheduled loss. But no, like they kept on firing. They kept playing the same type of hockey, and they took advantage of the opportunities that Minnesota gave them and came away with a pretty dominating 2 points.
I think what these last two games especially showed is that And I go back to a lot of the early season chaos, and I think people were a little too quick. I saw even some tweets saying, "Can we bring back the 1-3-1, please?" And it's just like, hang on, it's early season. We've seen that, right? We've seen early season high scoring games. That's not uncommon, but give it a little bit of time. And I think these last two games are two great examples of just how 1-3-1 or not, this team can still play. Their identity as a defensive structure. They still play a very, very structured game. They are number one in the NHL per natural stat trick and expected goals against per 60. So this is still a defensive first team, and they're accomplishing that without having to use the 1-3-1 to do it, which is, I think, what we were all hoping that they would get away from and say you can still be a good defensive team without that. You don't need that in order to be a good defensive team. So, and I give a lot of credit to, this is a team that they lose their number one defenseman and they're number one in the NHL right now in expected goals against per 60. I don't know. That's saying something, and I think you have to give credit to, I think Vladislav Gavrikov has been excellent to start this season. He's not been a guy that's always been maybe my favorite, like, stylistic defenseman. But this year, this is the best Gavrikov I've seen, I think, to be honest with you. That's in my opinion. He's been really good. He's answered the bell. Obviously, he's not going to provide much in terms of offense to replace Doughty, but when you look at the way Gavrikov is playing, plus the contributions they're getting from Clark offensively, you're kind of you're for lack of a better, you're making up for a bit of Matt Roy and Drew Doughty. It's kind of happening in a weird way or a different way, but you're finding that production and you're finding that good play, strong play from other guys, and that's what they were hoping for. That's what they were banking on, because without it, they're in a lot of trouble. But they're getting it from Clark, and in the meantime, I haven't loved Mikey Anderson's start, but he's starting to come along, I think. Same with Jordan Spence. So they're kind of buying some guys some time with really the strong play of, honestly, two defensemen are playing really good, in my opinion, and Gavrikov and Clark. But again, you're starting to see these other guys start to play a little bit better. So it's good to see, and it's really encouraging. The fact that they're still to be able to be this sound defensively without Doughty, and they don't need the 1-3-1 to do it. So it's encouraging.
It's weird, and I think I don't know which game it was, but we're also one of the top teams in the league for points from defensemen, which has never been a thing for the Kings. And then you lose one of your best offensive defensemen, and you're still able to do that. Because last year, if you look at it, it was pretty much Doughty, big gap, and then a bunch of people pulled at the bottom. And now you're getting some help. And you brought it up with Anderson and Spence. What have you guys seen from that pair? They decided to put them back together. Russ, what have you seen from them compared to what we saw earlier in the season?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I have to look at some of the numbers with that pair, but I think they were pretty strong. But I mean, I was just gonna single out Mikey Anderson because these last few games have been some of the best hockey, at least defensively, I've seen Mikey Anderson play. I mean, he's been physical. He's been strong individually. Like, you think about, like, it's funny, like, you see all these one-on-one plays with Mikey Anderson, and I feel so comfortable in that situation with him. Mm-hmm. And you think about, like, when he was early in his career, he felt like he was just on a highlight poster every time Nathan McKinnon or Kirill Kaprizov was coming down the wing. Like, Mikey Anderson was getting walked or dangled or whatnot. But, man, like, just seems like he's been this growth player. And yeah, like, he's been obviously been in the league for quite some time, but I have to say, like, I see Mikey Anderson and I'm like constantly just going, wow. Or like those Jim Foxes, like, oh, like those kind of things. Like, I mean, like, even like early parts of the year, like, I think, Joe, you brought up one of the goals where I think it was in Anaheim. Pass. Yeah, it was in Anaheim, the Kopitar strut pass to Kempe, where he had that kind of no-look backhand to set Kopitar up. And it's so funny because you brought that up. And there was another goal early in the season. He did the same exact thing, where he had that backhand turnaround. And he's been just so good. And that's the type of stuff that just goes unlooked, where it's like, yeah, you see the Kopitar stretch pass, you see like the primary assist that everybody kind of points out, the goal, whatnot. But like like at me as a playing as a defenseman growing up in hockey, like I love that stuff. That's the kind of things that I feel like that's doesn't get appreciated enough. So like I just like I have to give my flowers to Mikey. I mean, over the last 2 games, scoring chances with him on the ice have been 23-8 for the Kings. He's been on the ice for 4 goals, or I'm sorry, 6 goals in the last 4 games, 0 against at 5-on-5 play. He's been just an absolute stud. And it's like I feel like he's kind of really starting to take the reins as far as being an on-ice leader now with Drew Doughty not around. And that's where it's like that's where it's like, okay, like now I can see like once Doughty comes back, it's like, okay, you have Anderson Doughty. If Anderson continues playing at this rate, you have Gavrikov Spence. If Spence can continue to maybe build off the slow start that he had. And then Edmondson, which he's not going to go anywhere, everybody. So this is what it is. But I mean, when you have him paired with the superstar, super phenom, rookie sensation, everything you want to say, just to get Randon smiling here, and Brian Clark. I mean, this defensive group kind of like we've been pretty negative and pretty low on it the last couple years, and waiting for, I mean, this, I guess, left shot defense we've asked for, and we've thrown out all these names and whatnot, but I can see it being like a pretty solid group for this team.
When Doughty's back, you've got you just might be looking at a good to really good decor, assuming really at that point it does hinge on Clark continuing his play and Spence improving and getting more like he was last season. But because then you've got 5 legit defensemen, which again the Kings, they may have had 5 defensive defensemen, right? But like 3 of these guys can now produce, or contribute offensively. And then on the flip side, you've got Mikey, who's capable of that first pass, who he may not show up on a lot of the assists, but he may get that, like he may have that tertiary assist where he's kind of starting the breakout to get the thing going. So like there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe, with this decor. They have an anchor, but it is what it is. Clark's been able to drag him through and drag him around, so that works. I don't know that it matter if it's worth the 3.85 times 4, but that's all right. We're getting through. And yeah, Aaron, I honestly, like, I might be getting excited, not about the decor. Like, it's relative, like it's compared to recent Kings, but like there's something there. I think there's definitely something cooking.
I think it's because it's finally got that X factor to it in Clark.
Yes.
I mean, he just makes such a huge difference, because when, like, you never really had that piece. Like Jordan Spence was there last year, Doughty, Roy, like they weren't, like, as much as we love Spence and Doughty he's the Hall of Fame player that he is, they're not that like dynamic, like different, like gonna take over game type players on the back end. And with Clark, like it's so funny because the all the knock on maybe, like, I don't want to say knock, but like maybe all the worry about his defensive game as a young player, like I haven't seen it. I mean, I see him in one-on-one situations, and I think he's doing just fine, probably even a lot better than what people expected. So to have that kind of aspect of his game already start looking pretty good, we already know the offensive style is going to be there. So, I mean, if he can contribute offensively at the same pace he is at now, and maybe the Kings can, I don't want to say shelter him a little bit, but don't have to kind of deploy him at 23, 24 minutes a night once Doughty comes back, that gives you a lot of confidence that this decor can carry this team.
What do you make of him leading the team in penalties? Is it just his being out of place defensively, or Clark? Is it just circumstance at this point, him being young? Like, what do you kind of make of that?
I think it's just, yeah, I don't put anything on it. Inexperience. Yeah. I mean,
I thought the call last night was a little weak call, but
and from the ref's point of view, it's hard. I mean, because he falls, the Minnesota Wild player falls. It's like I always wonder, like, when a player falls like accidentally and then he ends up tripping the opponent, like technically it is a trip. Like that makes sense there. So it's like as a ref, like the offensive player maybe loses possession because of it. Like, what are you supposed to do at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I mean, yeah, as far as Clark's penalties, I'm not too concerned. I mean, it's just his defensive partner just continues to take penalty after penalty. What has it been 3-4 straight games? It seems like it's like, oh, Edmonton penalty, drink. Like it seems like at this point, like it's almost like the Fiala offensive zone penalties. Like, dude, like what are we doing? Like, bro, like relax. Come on.
There's times when I see him with what he does with his stick, be it, I mean, he is famous for the cross checks, but some of the slashing penalties he takes, he earns them. I mean, I'll respect a good slash. And so he's handed out a few good ones this year. So
I think it's so fun. I forget who does it online and they do the Fiala hat trick where it's like a goal assist and an offensive zone penalty.
Is it Kyle?
Kyle's
Kyle?
Yeah,
Kyle's that one? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely the Fiala hat trick tracker. Who that we have to talk about Kev because like since the benching, like he's been unreal. Like he's probably been one of the Kings' best forwards, it feels like. And it feels like it's no surprise, right? Like we've seen this before. And we've talked about Kev like all this time. Like he's a player, he plays on the edge, and he'll get to that point where he goes over the edge, where he feels like he can do whatever he wants on the ice. Maybe gets a little immature at times, but when you have that skill set, you have to figure out a way to rein it in. And sometimes it requires him being benched. And this is the second time I can remember it happening. And this is also the second time I can remember him bouncing back and being this type of Kevin Fiala that we all kind of expected him to be and to be in the NHL.
Last 3 games, Russ, he leads the team in shot contributions with 27. He's got 14 shot assists. And we talk about the creativity. When I started tracking these things, when they first got Fiala, that's when I was like, holy cow, this dude he's creating everything in the offensive zone. So that's when I think he's on his game. And nobody else on the team has more than 8 during that 3-game stretch. So he's doing it. He's way more involved now after was a little bit of a slow start, I think, the season. Then you mentioned the benching, and then he had to sit the game. He was scratched because of the meeting. So, but yeah, these last few games, to your point, he's been really, really active.
Yeah, I think it's been something to see, and it's the Kev that Will we saw the Kopitar, Fiala, Kempe line as Holden mentioned, but he's kind of been melding wherever melding well wherever he's been put. I think the power play, sometimes he tries to get a little too creative on the power play. And Dangle, I think when he's gotten the opportunity to shoot, he has shot, and kind of kept it simple in that aspect. Sometimes you want to make that extra pass, but the shot's kind of nice when you're hot like that. So overall, I've really enjoyed his game.
And you mentioned the line, Brandon, of Fiala getting back with Kopitar. And Kempe, we haven't seen that much, but just last game, 7 minutes, just over 7 minutes, 9-3 attempts, 5-1 shots on goal, 5-1 scoring chances. So it's only 7 minutes. I don't know if we'll see it together as we go forward. Obviously, we got the Turcotte injury and Lee. They moved some things around during that game against Minnesota. So we'll see what happens, but early returns weren't bad.
I feel like him and Clark will start to, or at least Clark maybe, like we all know the player and guy that Clark is with the confidence he exudes and everything like that. Like I almost wonder, it'll get to the point where, especially more on the power play, we'll see it when Fiala's doing all this crazy Fiala stuff, the no-look cross-ice passes, the dangles and whatnot. I almost wonder if we'll get to the point where Clark will be like, okay, anything you can do, I can do better aspect where it's okay, if you're doing stuff like that, I'm going to start doing. And that's where it's I would love to see them feed off each other and do stuff like that, because it's always just been okay, Fiala's been the only real playmaking electric guy that the Kings have kind of had on the power play. And now that you have Clark there, there's another dynamic playmaker there who's probably going to be trying to do and maybe even one up him in certain situations. And once they find that cohesiveness, I don't think it's actually we've seen it yet, but once they do, that's when the power play I think will start to take off.
Yeah, it's just I think Clark's still figuring out the league, and still figuring out what he can do, what his teammates can do, where the connection is. And you look at the the Mahomes-Kelsey connection, right? And they say, like, he doesn't even run routes. He just finds open spots on the field, and him and Mahomes have that mind meld. And so, the more you play with somebody and the more you know their tendencies and, their speed and everything like that, I think you're only going to see a better power play and then a better connection from Clark with the players on his team. So I think let's get into a little bit of coast to coast here. So we're going to switch gears here with coast to coast from Hockey Royalty, where we talk about the NHL around us here. So guys, some interesting stuff going on in the NHL. First, some people coming back from injury to the top centers on their teams in Macklin, Celebrini, and McDavid coming back from injury. So I'm interested to see mainly what Macklin's going to be able to do. Had a good first game and then got that hip injury. So the Sharks don't look like a dumpster fire. They made some good trades. Some of the young players have been suiting up. So I'm excited to see what Macklin can do. I mean, he looked good in his first game, and then it was kind of a bummer that he had to go off the ice.
I mean, yeah, they've won 4 of their last 5 games. I don't know if they won. It didn't seem like they won 4 games at all before the month of January. So, I mean, yeah, they're still going to be, I think, a cellar dweller in the Western Conference, but that's a team that needs to have Celebrini, not just to kind of perform, even win games, but that's a fan base. As much as we all hate them as Kings fans, they need to have some excitement to kind of build around. And Will Smith is starting to come into his own. He got his first goal, so that's good to see. But yeah, that team's not going to go anywhere as long as they need Celebrini to be in the lineup for them to show some excitement, at least on the ice.
If he plays well the next couple of weeks, do you think he gets an invite to the face-off?
No,
not a chance.
Not even close. No, I'll just say that.
I would agree.
What about Bedard? Do you think Bedard gets a chance?
Yes,
I like his chances.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just those are 2 teams, and so I actually tweeted this out, and then promptly Chicago came back and tied the game, but that they were not anywhere near that game. Like those teams, Chicago and San Jose, it's going to be a while, guys. Like that, though, I don't think those teams are going to be competitive for a while, and you see what's happened in Anaheim. It's taken a while. I've seen it out here in Buffalo. Like it's I know there's the idea to blow it up or whatever, but that's not always all it's cracked up to be. I think some of these teams are it's going to be a long time.
Yeah, people keep saying like you got to watch out for Anaheim. The Anaheim Ducks are coming.
I've been guilty
I see
of it,
them play.
Yeah. They
look awful. They look absolutely terrible. And I love it as a Kings fan. I've hated the Ducks. You guys know I live behind the Orange Curtain down here in Orange County. So they've always been my number one rival. And I love how much it's taken them, how they can't figure it out. I do want them to be competitive. It's always obviously fun when the Kings and Ducks have a legitimate rivalry. But yeah, Joe, like he said, like the rebuilds aren't always like similar. Like it's not always there's not a playbook that you have to like go off of. Like people talk about like how the Kings like, oh, they accelerated the rebuild. Well, yeah, would you rather be in the Duck situation where they haven't made the playoffs in like 6 going on 7 years and doesn't look like there's any time like it's going to happen anytime soon?
Yeah.
Like at least the Kings that sure they haven't won playoff series. Well, they've also ran into Connor McDavid the last 3 years, so there's that. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but even then, at least they're being competitive. They're winning games. They're making the playoffs. So if the Kings can just figure out a way to get past the Oilers, then we'll be maybe talking a little bit differently here. But I mean, with the Ducks, it's like I just don't know when that light at the tunnel is coming, because like I read a lot of the Ducks articles and the writers and you see all their comments on Twitter and whatnot from the fans, and it's like they're pissed. They're talking about fire Cronin, they want to fire Verbeek, and like they've taken this real patient approach in terms of roster building and letting the young players kind of play it out. Trevor Zegras seems like he's taking a step back. Mason McTavish seems like he's taking a step back. Luke Carlson's still pretty good, but even like besides him, it's just been the local Lucas Dostal show. And I mean, after that, I think they're allowing the most shots per game in the NHL right now. They're just getting absolutely hemmed. I can keep talking on and on just because I love watching.
Can
them.
they really be
End, but
allowing more than Montreal? Is that a thing? Montreal's
yeah, they are.
holy
I think I
cow.
checked before
You're
we came
right.
on.
They
here.
are. They are.
Yeah, it's unreal. Like every game I play, like they just lost 5-1 to Vancouver, and they weren't even close. And like I read somewhere, like somebody said, like, oh yeah, that's the worst performance that they've ever played. And I'm like, I saw you guys get crushed to Colorado and to the LA. Like that's the worst one. Like, man, things are bad. Things are bad down there in Anaheim.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like when you go to the rebuild, your hope is to get the number 1 overall pick or a top 2 pick to get a star to build around. Well, then what if that star doesn't hit the level of stardom? Then it kind of stalls the rebuild, which is what the Kings were kind of going for a little bit. Like Quentin Byfield didn't arrive. Velarde had all those injuries. Turcotte had injuries as well. So the rebuild with the star players was taking a little bit longer. They put Brant Clark in the AHL for 75 years before giving him a shot. So like you could see those things, and then you could have like Buffalo like draft the right guy. They drafted Jack Eichel. He was the star that they needed him to be, and then they couldn't build the pieces around him. Like the rebuilds aren't always the easiest.
Brandon, they had Eichel, Reinhart, Dahlin. They had Ryan O'Reilly, Taylor Hall. That was a roster at one point, and they couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Nah. I don't
know.
So
what's
going on with Buffalo?
So
Joe,
as much
what's going
as
on with Buffalo right now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, they like the Kings. They needed a scorer. They did not get a scoring winger, and that is not helping. They're also not getting some saves right now from their young goalies. UPL and Levi aren't playing. UPL, I think, coming off a good game. They just beat Ottawa handily the other night, so that was encouraging. But Dylan Cousins is not scoring right now. Matthias Samuelsson was a scratch. So like there's some things just aren't. It's not clicking. Like there was a couple years ago when Granato first took over. This team was high flying, like free flowing. They were a little leaky on the back end, but as a young rebuilding team loaded with skill, like that was the way to play. And I think they've gone a little too far away from that. And we'll see if Lindy Ruff's able to find that balance. And he hasn't really yet. I don't think their 5-on-5 metrics have been that bad, but they didn't score a power play goal for like a month.
Wow. With that talent, that's crazy.
Right. So they needed a score.
Well, Brian Flores, thank you, my man, with a $2 holler. Russ with the Bulls hat. Get a little shout out there.
Hardball, baby.
I don't know what BTFU is, but
bolt the F up.
Oh, okay.
That's what that means.
Oh, well then I'm not in the know then with the lingo.
I don't get to be too happy about my Chargers every once in a while. So the fact that we're winning games, I'm gonna enjoy it like we won the Super Bowl for the time being. things are looking pretty good within Harbaugh land. I'll say that.
Early returns are nice there. So
they are.
What early returns have not been so nice is some of the people in the bottom are kind of unexpected. We have Boston, Montreal is worse than we thought. So let's talk about the teams that maybe have surprised us, but in the other way.
Yeah. First of all, Aaron, this isn't a Harry Potter hat. I see your chat there, but yeah, the cellar dwellers, man. Like some of these teams at the bottom, like we were talking about Nashville, I guess as we'll all start off with, like, oh man, I do not know what's going on with the Predators, man. Like I was obviously high on them last year. They did make the playoffs, kind of surprised a lot of people. So when you add pieces like Marcia Show, Stamkos, Brady Shea, like you kind of thought like, okay, like you surprised everybody last year. You're not going to surprise anybody this year, especially with the additions you had. And they have just been, I don't want to say they've been terrible, but they just haven't been able to figure it out. And it started off, 0-5? They're now 4-7-1. Barry Trotz, I think it was today, threw the rebuild word out if things don't start going their way. They lost today to who'd they lose to? They lost to the Capitals of all teams, who seemed like world beaters. Which is crazy in that sense. It's almost like an opposite. But yeah, like I don't know, man. Like, you would think the Predators would, with all that talent they have and everything, that they would at least be pretty competitive. It's still early. It's only 12 games into the season, it feels like. But, I mean, we won't be able to keep saying this for much longer. I know the adage is once American Thanksgiving comes along, if you're not in a playoff spot, it's going to be tough for you to make the playoffs. But even then, it's still pretty early I think, at least. So, but yeah, they have to figure it out, because otherwise that's going to be a real bad look if they're not able to make the playoffs with all the money that they spent in the offseason.
Yeah, Nashville's that's a disappointing start. Another team that I don't think was like expected to make playoffs necessarily, but take a step. And that's Marty St. Louis' Montreal Canadiens. Like, I know they were probably going to be still like a bottom 10 team, but I think there was hope that this team could really take another step with Slafkovsky getting kind of his feet under him. Nick Suzuki's a stud. They got Cole Caulfield, obviously having a really good early career. They go out and they get Patrick Laine to kind of add a little bit. And then he gets hurt, of course. Unfortunately, that didn't go well. But that hasn't been good. They are a team that is atrocious defensively. They lead the league in expected goals. They're the worst in expected goals against. Russ had mentioned how bad Anaheim was in shots against. Montreal's just a couple behind them. So, that's a team that, again, we're talking about these rebuilding teams. Montreal, and I'll kind of maybe lump Buffalo. And even if you look at Detroit too, Detroit's really struggling too. These teams at the bottom of that division, where at some point you're like, who's gonna be the team that steps up and actually makes a run here after these builds? And it just isn't one of them. I don't know I don't know at what point Marty St. Louis gets on the hot seat, because for a while there, like, everything's okay. They're a young team and he's got them going a bit, but at some point, that's a pretty demanding market. So I suspect that they'll get frustrated if they don't start putting some wins together.
That Atlantic division is kind of interesting. I'm looking at the standings right now, and with all the troubles that Boston's kind of going through their season, they're 6-7-1. They're fourth in that division.
Yeah.
Ahead of the Senators, Red Wings, Sabres, and Canadiens. So it's like, yeah, I mean, even just ahead of them is the Lightning, and they're 7-6-0. Like, it's that there's not a lot of separation. I mean, the Maple Leafs are 7-5-2.
Yeah.
So it seems like a lot of teams in that division are off to maybe a slower start than what a lot of people expected. I guess you kind of look at the Metro. A lot of the teams that maybe people did kind of expect are at the top: Carolina, New Jersey, New York, Washington. I guess maybe a little bit more of a surprise. Philadelphia, they're kind of disappointing me. I don't know if you guys saw Tortorella's, like, we got a good Tortorella presser the other day when people were asking him questions and he was just like, yep, nope, yep, nope. It's just like, oh, I'm out of here. It's like, well, there's that. I don't know. He's probably super pissed about everything that's going on. And I guess just kind of bring it back to the Pacific Division, it just seems like all the teams that we kind of expected to be at the top are at the top. All the teams that we expected to be at the bottom are at the bottom. The Oilers, they're 6-6-1. I'm not gonna be happy about that. They'll figure it out like they always do.
Russ is downplaying my Flames being in a playoff position right now.
Oh,
they're in a wild card spot.
I watched. What game did I watch?
You're not a believer?
Did I watch? I watched some of the Battle of Alberta. I think it was on Sunday. I look at that lineup. It is impressive. I'll give you that. Like, that team, you can see the talent is there. And if Huberdeau looks pretty good. So there's that, like, which that was like a key. Like, if they don't have Huberdeau playing to the top level that he should be playing, especially with his contract, then they weren't going to go anywhere. And it seems like he's getting a little bit more acclimated without any questions of which side he's playing on the ice, which was always kind of weird. But yeah, so we'll see how long it goes.
It's
You're gonna start betting on some games with them now, or
that'll put them right into the ground.
Yeah,
they're right in that weird spot that the Flames cast was worried about. Like, the team is probably not good enough to win the cup, but they're not going to get a bottom 10 pick, which means they're going to have to give up the earlier pick. They're kind of in that zone there of what they should do. But we'll see how the game goes along. Plenty of season left. But that was coast to coast. brought to you by our next sponsor here at Raycon. So, everybody loves a good deal, Cyber Monday or Black Friday, except Raycon does this all year long. Because with Raycon, you get an amazing deal on premium auto every day of the year. But that doesn't mean they're not having an additional sale for Cyber Monday. Far from it. They're actually doubling down on their amazing value by offering viewers up to 30% site-wide. So a Cyber Money deal you can appreciate every day. Raycon is everyday earbuds, especially if you haven't checked out their latest model, which includes plenty of new features that makes them even more must-have for any audio lover. For example, now the feature of 32-hour battery life, multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. Raycon's earbuds also come with active noise cancellation. I know I've been wearing these earbuds the last couple of weeks. I got myself a pair. Going to the gym, everybody's got their music on loud, or walking down the street and you just don't want to be bothered listening to your podcast. That noise cancellation is beautiful. Because that's another thing. Also, Raycon gives you visuals as well with different colors. I went with the standard black on mine, but if you want to spice it up and get a different color, you're more than welcome to do so. Because that's another thing. Although Raycon's quality rivals some of the biggest names of premium auto, Raycon starts with just half the price of the other people. So you're getting this incredible deal even before you factor in the Cyber Monday offer of up to 30% statewide. So over the last couple of weeks, I really recommend these Raycons. They've been great with working out. They've been great walking around the town. Good audio. I like the fact that there's so many commands that you can do by tapping on either side and everything like that. So it makes it really easy to use, super easy to pair. So I've really enjoyed the Raycons and the earbuds, because I don't like the way some of the other competitors stick out. They're firm in my ear. So even when I'm running, they stay where they're supposed to. So Raycon's everyday earbuds are available now. Now's a perfect time to scoop them up if you haven't already. And don't worry, if you're not impressed as I am with their offer of 30%, you also have a 30-day happiness guarantee. So there's really no loss in this deal. So now it's time to save big for Cyber Monday. Go buy raycon.com/THPN today to get up to 30% off statewide or site-wide. That's right. You get up to 30% off everything at Raycon's website if you go buyraycon.com/THPN.
Real quick, I know we were shouting out some players earlier, and there was so many that we could shout out because they've been playing so well. I could go on and on about the play of Alex Ferrier and his start, but Warren Fogle, man, like we're now starting to see the Warren Fogle that at least I expected to see these last few games. And it seems like whenever the Kings kind of need a big goal, he's always the one like to pot it. And it's the way he's scoring these goals too are just like so Warren Fogle like lifting sticks in hard on the forecheck, creating plays, and those dirty type of goals that maybe I mean the Warren Fogle type goals that I thought he'd bring to LA. And we're seeing it. Like he's been so good. And I think that line with him and Byfield's now down the middle and LaFerriere on the other side, like those three have been pretty good the last few games.
Yeah, that's been a really good fit. I think he's playing really well. He's found a home there. I think in that spot, he's been really good. I agree.
What
great
do
on
you
the penalty kill too.
Yeah, that him and Byfield have been good on the penalty kill. What do you think has been the difference? Just kind of finding the connection, because it didn't really work with Byfield and Fiala in the beginning, but now he's back with Byfield and LaFerriere. Is it just the different tertiary player, or are you seeing something different in his game?
I think it could be a couple of things. It could be one, it could be matchups, depending on who he's matched up against when he was up with that other line. The other part, I just think he's better suited to play with this style of player, I guess, if that makes sense. Where I don't know that he's one that I mean it's hard to say, because I mean the idea because he started with Byfield and Fiala, was that right at the start of the season? I don't know that Fiala, I don't see the fit with him on a line with Kevin Fiala, like with the way Fiala plays. Like Fogle's way more of that north-south go, uses speed, where I think it's nice for Fiala if he has somebody that's able to be a little bit more patient at times, particularly in the offensive zone, because he may hold on to the puck for that extra half second, make a different move. So he's going to look to make a play. So he may need somebody that's going to kind of read the play and kind of play off of him, where I don't know that that's necessarily Fogle. So I think it's a stylistic fit a lot more with where he is right now.
What are you guys seeing? Byfield got his first goal last night. Has there been a little bit of improvement from his game? Has he just been snake bitten, or is it really that line combination that's kind of working for him?
Yeah, I think he's just been snake bit. To be honest with you, he's getting the chances at least the last few games, and he's been a lot more assertive, especially with the puck. Like, I need to stop seeing him like stop at the half wall, like when he's got the puck on his stick. And I don't know, I forget who brought it up, but somebody mentioned a play. I forget what game it was, but he was streaking down the side, entered the zone, and just stopped at the half wall. And someone mentioned to me like that Byfield last year, and especially that goal he scored in Montreal, he would have just taken it straight to the net. And it felt like we saw that a little bit more from him last year. And I don't know if he's getting the Kopitar-isms, where he just is just a pass first type of guy and maybe looking to set things up. There's still that to his game. I see it come out a little bit more, where I just love to see him just, hey, shoot for a pad or something and create a rebound and crash the net, get a dirty goal. And there's still times when he's maybe trying to make that extra pass, but he's shooting a lot more, which I love to see. There was that 3-game stretch where he just didn't even have a shot on goal, which is just, you can't have that. You got to at least get a shot. I know you have the puck in the offensive zone, so you're getting the chances. You're just not looking to shoot. So don't be turning into Ben Simmons on me. Like, you need to be shooting the puck when you get the opportunity. And it seems like he is in the last few games. So for him to get that goal too, and the way he scored it, it's so funny because like I was looking at the tweets I was doing the game. It's like the tweet right before his goal was like, keep shooting Q. And then the next goal was just like a deflection goal. It's like, hey, like, you take him however way you can get him. I think, Joe, you had mentioned like, hey, can a puck just go off of him at one point? It's like, right? That's all he needed.
Yeah, because I think he's playing. I think he's playing fine. I don't know that he's playing great like we've seen him in the past, but he's playing good. You know, I do view him as more of a playmaker. I don't see him as somebody that, although I think it was talked about that he maybe worked on this in the offseason, Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, trying to his shot and trying to score from distance, if you will. For him, I think for that to be effective, like you see Kevin Fiala can score from almost a standstill sometimes. Same with Kopitar and Kempe, where if Byfield can learn as if he doesn't know how to do it, but work on and continue to improve his shot mid-stride, that can be where he becomes dangerous. When he is streaking down one of the wings or something like that with the puck, and if he can shoot it mid-stride and be a guy that's scoring off the rush directly off a shot like that I can see being something that could be a part of his game. But right now, I do still see him as more of a passer. He's kind of doing that. I would say right now, I've got him second on the team in shot assists per 60. And I got him in second in slot passes too. So he is involved. He is being a playmaker. And he's doing a little bit of both. He's in the upper, he's above average in shot attempts per 62. So yeah, I think he's coming along. He's had a really good few games here, and it's just nice to see him get off the schneid.
And he's finding success playing down the middle too, which is great. Like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't really start off too great, I guess, at the beginning. They transitioned him back to the wing on the top line, moved him back to center, and unfortunately, because of Turcotte's injury, he's probably had to play there a little bit more. But yeah, he's looking pretty good there, which is a great sign. You wanted to see that just continue. If he can continue to find success, whether he's scoring or not, if that line can find success with him in the middle of it, that's good.
You mentioned the Turcotte injury. So Turcotte took a hit up high. I wouldn't say it was to the head, but it's a pretty high hit from a much bigger guy. Went down, kind of looked a little irritated on the bench, and then didn't come back into the game. Russ, have you heard anything from the team regarding his expected time for return? He didn't play last night against Minnesota, but has there been any update from Kings brass?
There hasn't been any update. I'm trying to find the quote from Hiller. I almost said McClellan. The quote from Hiller on Turcotte after the game. Okay, here it is. I talked to him. He's going to be all right. I'm not sure when he'll be able to get back in, but he's fine. And like, there's a lot of questions regarding and maybe concern. There wasn't, like, I guess, a more definitive or I guess specific answer to that question, which I get. But I feel like with the injury, and obviously it's just speculation, it certainly seems like it's kind of more of like a concussion aspect, maybe a head injury, because it didn't seem like maybe a shoulder. I don't know. I'm just totally guessing at this point. But with everything and with that Turcotte's, I guess, gone through, and it certainly looks like how he looked on the bench, because he was able to take a shift right after. And you could kind of see, like, when he was playing, he just wasn't really fully engaged and wasn't really that typical type or that same type of Turcotte that we've seen throughout the early parts of this year. And then sure enough, he leaves and he doesn't return for the third period. So I can kind of see where Hiller's trying to get at there. It's such a fine line to say, like, he knows that Turcotte was probably dazed. It's probably like, hey, I talked to him. He's going to be good, but we'll see where he's going to be at going forward. So I'm sure they're just trying to be extra precautious with him. I don't know. We'll see him anytime soon. I know they practice or they have the morning skate tomorrow before the game in Vancouver. So I'm planning on going there. Hopefully I'm going to try to get there early. So hopefully we see Turcotte at least skating or maybe even skating with the team. Who knows? But I mean, hopefully with everything he's gone through, you hate to see like this happen again with the type of player that Turcotte is. Especially with the start that he's had. It's just terrible.
Yeah, with everything he's gone through, and to your point, with the start that he's had, and there's two guys that really have not gotten going offensively, and Deneau and Moore, and you know what, Turcotte seems to be a guy that can get everybody else going. So maybe if he is healthy enough, maybe slot him next to Deneau and Moore and see if he can get them clicking a little bit, because that'd be nice if they can get on the board, because Turcotte's had a nice start to the season. But hey, we talked about this before the season, to not bank on 80 games from guys like Turcotte and Thomas. Obviously Thomas was a healthy scratch for a while at the start of the season, but these are guys that unfortunately do battle injuries, and we shouldn't just assume that they're going to have a healthy season. And hopefully this isn't long term. Hopefully he's back tomorrow. So we'll see. He's had a nice start. So hopefully it's not too long.
I had a really good chat with Jim Fox at one of the practices a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Alex Turcotte, and we talked about the injuries and whatnot, and it got to, like, we were talking about, like, maybe it's just because of the style of play. He kind of plays with this almost reckless abandon where he's just always involved, got his head down, just hunting pucks, and always like right on top of the play, like along the boards, wherever it is on the ice. And he brought up Sidney Crosby of being the same type of way when he first got into the league, of being like always involved in play and like just like the same type of Alex Turcotte style. Like obviously they're two different players and whatnot, but it was very interesting because you kind of see it. Like Crosby, yeah, he's the same type of way. Like he's always going to be a two-way player, involved everywhere, and Turcotte's been that same way. So like if I think Turcotte just needs to find a way to protect himself a little bit more. Like availability is always going to be the best ability, and especially with the way he's been playing. I know it's like you don't want to limit a player's strength in terms of how he plays and what makes him successful, but you got to find a way to stay healthy. You can't be taking these big hits from players like that across along the boards.
He seems to leave himself vulnerable sometimes, where the Kings have had a fourth line center that was not very big for a long time in Blake Lizotte, and I don't know that he ever had that issue. I don't know if I want to call it awareness, but for lack of a better term, I guess just that hit, which I thought was a clean hit by Lizotte. I don't know, like I would fully expect to be hit there, and it seemed like he wasn't. So I don't know. There's times where it seems like he leaves himself vulnerable to a big hit like that at times. I don't know if that's what Jim Fox was getting at, but
yeah, it's hopefully it's just one game or a couple games and he's back in. Maybe it was just a thing like, hey, he took a hit. It's the end of a back-to-back. We'll just give him a day of rest and get Lee back in the lineup, and that's all it is. So it's something to check tomorrow at the lineup. So Russell will be on it for all you fans to see if he's back skating. I think let's get into the guy pulling all the strings. And Hiller has been doing some great coaching lately, pressing all the right buttons. What have you liked so far from Hiller in the first 14 games?
I don't know. Like it's hard because like, yeah, you could say he's pressing all the right as far as like strings, as far as lineup decisions, because that's pretty much, I guess, what a coach does. Like he was great, obviously, with the Fiala situation, benched him, like the whole meeting thing, whatever, like scratch. I guess that's just team. He didn't really maybe have a lot of control in that, but it could have been something else. You never know. They just won't tell us. But as far as some of the lineup decisions, he's made a lot of good choices. I mean, Byfield was off to a slower start down the middle, moved him up to the wing, got him maybe a little bit more confident, moving him back to center. I guess injuries maybe played a little bit more aspect of that. But I mean, defensively, like with a lot of the questions that we have, especially with playing Andreas Englund, like it is what it is. Joe Edmondson and Clark are never going to be separated, so that's always going to be a pair. Besides that, he was the one who figured out Anderson, Gavrikov. He moved Gavrikov to the right side. That played really well. He keeps trying to figure out Spence and Anderson, even though they've really struggled at times. Their metrics were terrible. Not alone good, like not even good. They were terrible together. But I love that he's keep on giving Spence the opportunity to showcase his ability at that top pair. Because if you can unlock Spence and kind of get that same type of player that we saw at times last year, then yeah, like that's where we were talking about earlier about how that gets you excited about the defensive core. But I think it's just almost like this buy-in now that the team is getting is what's so important. Because like that's so hard, especially when you talk about switching from a 1-3-1 to a 1-2-2. Like I'm telling you guys, like I'll compare it to Jim Harbaugh down in San Diego, to the Chargers. Like the Chargers were the worst defense in the NFL last year. Now they're the best defense in the NFL, and that's because you have buy-in. And if you don't get players that are bought in, and you're not going to be successful. And with Jim Hiller, he's come in, he's kind of established this more kind of personal relationship with a lot of players. He's a lot more of a player type coach than I guess maybe McClellan is. McClellan has always seemed like a more of an X's and O's type of coach. Where Hiller, like I remember, like last year, even when he was assistant coach, he always stayed late on the ice. He always had one-on-one chats with players, be a different player every practice, and we've seen that kind of continue. And he's really kind of let DJ Smith and Newell Brown maybe take control. Like there'll be times when DJ Smith is running a drill and maybe it'd be like a 5-on-5 drill, or Newell Brown is running a drill and Jim Hiller's just sitting on the bench, like chatting it up with the players. And that's where you get like some excitement because like, yeah, it's a sport and it's like these players are getting paid millions of dollars, but technically it's still kind of work for them. So they have to come to practice and it's this redundant kind of environment that they're always around. So you have to have some excitement to come to practice and maybe some excitement in meetings. And we don't obviously know what's going on there, but you can sense that there's that kind of enthusiasm now built within this team where like, I don't know if it'll happen, but where they'll have that kind of winter's coming fall off that they had last year where they lost 17 straight or they went winless in 17 straight. But I think that's what gives me a little bit more confidence when you have a coach like Jim Hiller behind the bench who maybe gives off a little bit more of an enthusiasm and I guess excitement as a coach and more of a personality now. Because I certainly see that too, just even in media availabilities. He's a lot more personable with media, giving answers and even shunning answers too, which I've seen at times, which has been pretty fun to watch. So yeah, like I think besides all the X's and O's and lineup decisions he's made, I think the relationship that he's been able to build with a lot of these players has been working for him.
I mean, just simply put, I mean, Russ hit pretty much everything on the head there. And to back it up, I mean, just look at the numbers that this team has put together. They lead the Pacific Division. They're second in the NHL in actual points. They're third in shot attempt share. They're second in expected goal share, fourth in scoring chances share, and second in high danger chances. They're one of the best 5-on-5 teams in hockey right now. And that's something for a team, again, like we said, that lost their number one defenseman, that's going through a system change, that's got some young forwards sprinkled through the lineup up top that you didn't know what you were going to get out of. Now, I think, you know, if you're trying to like be a little bit more kind of realistic or whatever you want to say, or a little bit more like pump the brakes a little bit. I think Alex Laferriere's production is not covered up, but it's really helped, right? Because this team, I thought and still think, is missing an impact forward to be a real threat come playoff time. But Laferriere is kind of, put that to bed a little bit in the start with the way he's produced. Now, will he continue to do that? We'll see how the season goes. He's obviously off to a great start, but I think that's really helped, because you figure this team, I assumed, was going to have some trouble scoring without adding that top six forward, but they've gotten the production from a Laferriere, which was a source that there were some out there. I know there's one, was it Trapper9 on Twitter that said he's going to have 27 goals. I forget, somebody on Twitter says he's going to have 27 goals. So there was a few out there that thought there could be production here, but that's a bold prediction, if you will, because there really wasn't a ton of signs of that. Other than last year, he found himself in good positions. He found himself getting in the right areas. They weren't going in. This year they're going in. So, I think that's a really, really good thing, and that's helping Hiller too, is when he's got a guy that's able to, he's gotten a couple of guys to produce that maybe he didn't expect this type of production from, right? With Laferriere and Clark. I don't know that he expected Clark to lead the team in assists and Laferriere to lead the team in goals through the first 14 games. So that's great though. They're getting the opportunity and they're taking advantage of it.
I think there is something to as much as we maybe don't like the deployment of players like Andreas Englund and Trevor Lewis at times, you can see at least in some of these videos that the team has shared with post game, like the players love Andreas Englund. They really, he seems to really bond with the team. Obviously, they love Trevor Lewis. He's a big locker room guy. Talent is at some point is going to trump that type of kind of, I guess, relationship that players maybe have with each other. But when you have players that other players can kind of gather around, especially with a player like England that's going to stick up for players with fights and whatnot, and he gets playing time, when Hiller gives him that confidence to throw him out there, as much as we hate it or whatever, players they're gonna like that. They're gonna grow fond of that deployment for a player like England. So that's something that I'm sure young players, especially, that I think Hiller even mentioned that last year, when you see a young player and you look over to your side and you see England there by your side, and maybe it gives you a little bit more confidence for a player like England or Turcotte or Byfield, and to kind of go out there. I'm not saying to play England all the rest of the season. I'm not gonna say that, because I know eventually it'll come back to bite him. But here and there, if it is what it is, if we see England out there, he's not going to be playing a ton of minutes. If the team is going to build around it and be okay with it, then it's going to win you games. Then sure, have at it.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing you said is the buy-in, and you see it with all great teams, and you saw it, and I saw it nothing but that term in the documentary for the Hockey on Amazon, and the Panthers were like, hey, we're bought in with each other, we're bought in with the team, we're here, and we got each other's backs. And it seemed like when the going got tough in the last couple of years for the Kings, there was some pretty big collapses, like the one in January. In the playoffs, when we lose games, it was always because of heart. It didn't seem like the team was putting getting going to the crease, or putting that extra effort into forecheck or back check. And so this team, although it's had its games where they've looked absolutely awful, for the most part, they do look a little bit more bought in than usual.
And I think it was the video that they shared after the Golden Knights game, where it was the game following the game in San Jose, where it was just a pathetic performance. And you can see in Hiller's kind of speech and little mini speech to the team, you can sense that kind of personality that kind of came to the forefront a little bit, where he talks about a response that was needed. And that's that was what at least I wanted to see. I'm sure that's what a lot of Kings fans wanted to see. After that San Jose game, you needed to see this team respond and showcase that, okay, that was just a fluke. That was just us not on our game. We weren't engaged. That was just awful. And he said it best. He said, like, I remember that video. He said night after night after night, we need to see that. And that's what you need in this team, because McClellan had always felt like, okay, the same kind of approach, same thing. McClellan was giving the high fives to everybody after the game, and it is what it is. I'm not to say he wasn't a good coach, but sometimes you need a kick in the ass a little bit, and I feel like Hiller's not afraid to do that at times.
Sometimes teams need the Dan Campbells, like those styles of coaches, that the Harbaughs that are players coaches, and maybe that's the better coach or the better fit for this team. I mean, it's when you listen to Dan Campbell or Harbaugh talk, and he backs up his players and get the locker room going and all this kind of stuff like that. Some teams and players respond to those coaches better than the Bill Belichick's and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with the Tortorellas or the Belichick type coaches, because they're effective in the league and they get the job done most of the time. But sometimes teams need to respond differently to a different style, and maybe Hiller is that style that this Kings team needs to get over the hump. So with that being said, is this team, pretender, or contender? Does it seem like a team that maybe can push to the next level of the mountaintop?
By that, do you mean win a round, win the division, cup contender? What is your barometer?
What do we want to equal the barometer?
Well, I think at least for me, anyways, like for me coming into this season, you got to find a way to win a playoff round, whether you're playing Edmonton or not. Like, can we get a round? Like, I think don't put the cart before the horse and talk about a cup or anything like that, or contenders. Like, you got to show that you can get out of a round before you do that, I think. So for me, it's, can they get out of the first round?
Okay. And so let's use that as the barometer.
Okay.
Where does this team maybe stack up to doing that?
Well, I mean, I guess for me, a lot of it could come down to matchup. They're performing better than I would have thought. And so, like, right now, if I look hypothetically, they play Calgary, I think, if the playoffs were to start today. I can see them winning that round. But do I think they win the division? No. Do I think they can beat Vancouver or Vegas or Edmonton in a first round? I'm still going to say no. I think right now, but we'll see when Doughty gets back. Changes the complexion of the D, as Russ said earlier. That's a big add. And I think if they're in a position to try to find a way to get a forward, although I am hesitant on doing that because I don't think this team is a team that's going to make a deep run. So I don't know that I don't want to spend bullets to go get a guy that I don't know if it's going to make a big difference, but I guess we'll see. So that's, I don't know. I think they're showing some good signs. They're doing a lot of things right, but right now they're concerned. There are some concerns for me. Right now, my concerns are I still think they're missing a top six forward. I think that coincides with the power play not really being great right now. It's showing some signs of life, but not being great. And I know Kemper's played pretty well recently. I'm not there yet. I'm not sold right now that Kemper is a guy that you can like count on. I mean, I think I tweeted the other day, it looks like we're getting good Kemper today because he played great, but there's other times where he plays way less great. So you just don't know what you're getting from him night in, night out. So that's a little bit of a question mark, I guess. I do think I still think they're a tier behind. Like if I just look at the Pacific Division, I still think Vegas, Vancouver, Edmonton are a tier ahead of them.
I mean, yeah, for me, it's just the benchmark is Edmonton. Can this team beat Edmonton? It's for me. Like, I don't care about anyone else because it's we're going to be talking like this, and April's going to come, and it's going to be the Kings and Oilers in round one. Like, that's what I can already see it. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And yeah, like, I'm not going to be a homer and say that I look at this team and think they could beat Edmonton because I don't see this team right now, even with Doughty probably as a team that could beat Edmonton. But Joe, you said something like, why wouldn't this team go out and try to get a forward? Like, why wouldn't you try? Like we're talking about, like, if this team even is at where they were last year, they finished last year as a first round exit. You're talking about maybe even if you have to use like your first round pick, that's what, 21st overall? Like, I mean, yeah, Liam Greentree, we're all pretty high on him, but I mean, who knows, right? Like, it is what it is. But like, if this team did add like, because that's pretty much what we all kind of think they need, right? Is like, if they are able to add a young forward or at least a top 6 type forward scorer to play with a Kopitar or play with Deneau or whatever, and then you can move Fiala down wherever. Like, if you're able to add that kind of player with maybe some term, I'm not saying go out and spend your first rounder on a rental, but if you're able to add that player maybe before January or before the Four Nations, I'd be totally for it. And then I can see like, okay, let's see where things go from there.
Yeah, I'll amend that. Sure, that's fair. I guess maybe what I was getting at was maybe not spend it because they don't have, like, they have a first round pick. They don't have really high prospects that are going to net you a star or a player that's going to be impactful. So really, you're looking at a first round pick, and the team already doesn't have a second round pick. So would they be willing to trade that first in a season where, you know, is it really the year that they're going to take a run? That was kind of my thought process. But if you're telling me that maybe there's a player that you can get that has a little bit of term on the deal, that it's going to be more than just this year, I'm open to that.
Do you think well, Tyler Toffoli just signed a 4-year deal? I think it all comes down to the what we talked about in the offseason. How big is the jump for the young studs? How much more can Brandt Clarke improve by the end of the season? Is LaFerriere a consistent scorer, you know, where he's going to pot 20 to 30? Will we see Deneau and Moore get back up? So I think there's a lot of what ifs. And because if Brandt Clarke's a weapon they didn't have last year or any year that they've played at Edmonton, LaFerriere is a completely different player than he was last year as far as scoring the puck. So like those upticks in that thing, and I don't think Edmonton is that much different. Like, so, you know, yeah, they brought in some people, but it's always McDavid and Draisaitl up at the top. They're going to try to win on the power play. You got to play a good penalty kill against them. Can't take back penalties, and that's how they're gonna win. So,
well, the problem Randon, the Kings take a lot of penalties right now. The Kings are one of the more penalized teams in the league. They signed a guy specifically to do that on the back end, and he's doing it. So that is a little scary. That's a great point, though, because that's what Edmonton's going to do, and you don't want to go to the box. And the Kings are spending a lot of time in the box.
Too much time. Way too much time. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned, Brandon, like, yeah, what is the jump of the young players? We haven't seen this Brandt Clarke play behind Drew Doughty yet. And that's why it's like we talked about it at the beginning, like trying to evaluate this team of like who we are. And we're not going to be able to fully evaluate them until Drew Doughty comes back, because that's such a big piece in terms of eating minutes, production on the power play, wherever he plays, I guess. Once he comes back, now that Brandt Clarke's kind of producing on the power play, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, like if he can maybe shelter Clarke in terms of matchups too, like that's huge. You have Doughty and Anderson out there matching up against the team's top units, where you don't have to have Gavrikov Anderson out there or whatever, or even have to worry about Edmondson Clarke out there together. You're going to have Edmondson Clarke out there against other teams' bottom 6, lesser maybe talented type players. I feel like you've given maybe a little bit more of an edge to the Kings, looking at some of the depth pieces that some other teams have. I mean, like you said, like the Oilers, it's just going to be the same 5 people. It's going to be McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Bouchard, and Ekholm. Like, can you beat them? That's all that matters, right? Because Edmonton's going to be down 3-1, 3-2 in the third period, and those 5 players are going to be out on the ice like 15 out of 20 minutes of the third period. So it's like, can you beat those players? And like, that's where I'm like, I don't know if this team can right now, but like, I would say maybe their depth is probably a little bit better. I think they're actually tied for second in the NHL right now with 17 different players with a goal. I think the first place team has 18 different players. So yeah, like you're seeing depth scoring maybe comes to the forefront a little bit more with this Kings team than you had maybe what we kind of hoped for them to have last year. especially with the third line being LaFerriere, Byfield, and Fogle. If that pair can continue, if those trio can continue to produce the way they're producing, and you have Fiala to know more, and I think that's why it's like if they can find that one last piece to kind of pair with Kopitar and Kempe. I know Turcotte was playing pretty well there. I don't know if it would be sustainable for a full year, but like, yeah, if you can find that one piece, I think that kind of gives you a little bit more of confidence that they can at least be more competitive with Edmonton.
I think it's just there's a lot of factors. If I'm thinking in a positive manner, I think there's more avenues for them to beat Edmonton. Right, the power play is not clicking right now, 17.1%. But Clark's only going to get better if they can start clicking on the power play, because one of our keys to victory against Edmonton last year is you have to make them pay somewhat amount of time that they make you pay on the power play. Like you have to even out the special strength goal. So can a team like the Kings get to a little bit higher level of power play? Will they get more from the back end there? And then there's a couple players that, like I said, LaFerriere, Turcotte, Akil Thomas, those types of things. I think when the full D-core gets back, I think your overall D-core is probably a little bit better if things can continue playing with Spence and Clark the way they have been going. So, McDavid can take over a series. He took over the entire playoffs last year. So it's not like I'm expecting them to punish Edmonton, but I just think there's a lot more avenues if things keep trending with this team the way they're going, with the young players progressing, with our envision of what the D-core could possibly look like, and to where if they do go get another impact player, great. If they don't, I still think that there's avenues for this team to win, and I do think the series would be a lot more competitive, especially if we have the Turcotte we're seeing in LaFerriere in the Clark.
Totally agree. Edmonton actually just lost to Vegas. Surprisingly, Vegas is 8-3-1. That was their first road win of the season. I didn't even know that. So
I think Edmonton was up in that game after 2. What was the?
It's 2-1. I think Vegas scored 3. They scored 3 goals in the third period.
Oh wow!
1 empty netter.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, to go back, Brandon, to kind of answer the original question. I think they're a tier behind. And that's just the Pacific teams, right? That doesn't include. I know Colorado's not in a playoff spot right now. They're a little thin, so I don't know what to make of them right now. But
their injuries are unreal.
Yeah. But at Dallas, I still think they're a tier behind Dallas too. So I think it could depend on a matchup.
The thing is, we won't know until what this team really looks like until February, which is kind of tough to see, especially at the trade deadline. Like, how many weeks are we actually going to get with Doughty on this lineup for Rob Blake to accurately assess this team on what we can do? Like, I think the Kings do have the firepower, Joe, to go get somebody. I mean, Liam Greentree has only increased his stock, so it'd probably have to be a Greentree and a first to go get something, of real strength. Could they get a rental for a B-level prospect in a third or whatever? Maybe. But I think the team, I think the most important thing is for the teams to know where they're at, where they stand. And that'll depend on when Doughty comes back from his injury and how the team looks for the short period of time, between then and the trade deadline.
Yeah, I wonder how Rob Blake's going to view this team too. Because, if he's on the fence or on the chopping block, which we kind of maybe all expect if this team doesn't go past the first round, like how desperate is he going to be to try to improve this team before the playoffs come around? So that'll be something to watch too, but don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We're not even at Thanksgiving yet. Well, I'm just going to enjoy the ride that we're on right now.
Yeah.
Well, we thought that last year and they did nothing.
Yeah,
exactly.
So yeah, it's 8-3-3. Great start. It's weird. I think the team is really looking like they starting to come around in that aspect. It was kind of awkward. Joe and I talked about on the last pod, like, we don't really know what to make of this team, but they're putting points on the board. So, why look a gift horse in the mouth? So it's nice to see that the team's kind of hitting a little bit of a stride, playing Vancouver tomorrow. And when they're playing games, you can always bet on those games with our last sponsor here at THPN, which is DraftKings. So DraftKings is a place where, your quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck dropping for the 24-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. I'm looking at the odds tomorrow night. The over-under set at 5.5. So if you think that the team is going to go get over 5.5, go ahead and smash that button and place your bet with DraftKings. Odds are always subject to change. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill and Casino Resort in Kansas. 21 age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. So before we sign off, go ahead.
Sorry, I just saw the goal. So it was tied 2-2 in the Vegas Edmonton game with like 50 seconds left, and I think it was Ekholm kind of turned it over and to a Vegas player. I don't know who it is, and then Hannafin was left all alone, streaking down the left side and beat Skinner the circle with like 45 seconds left to take the lead. Man, the Oilers, I don't know, man. Like I always want to be like so down on them, and it's like, oh yeah, this is maybe finally their downfall, and like they give me performances like this, and then they'll go and win 12 in a row or something.
So the schedule coming up, they have Vancouver, Columbus, which they're playing better hockey than a lot of people thought. The Flames, like we mentioned earlier, the Avs, who have been hit the injury bug, but they still got some of the best players in the game, and then Detroit. So not an overly hard schedule, not a super easy schedule, but out of those 5 games, I still think it's where we could easily pick up 8 points out of those 5 games, or with the way this team's been playing. So it'll be interesting to see the schedule coming up.
Yeah, I won't list the entire schedule, but the month of November, it doesn't seem too difficult. I mean, there's a home stretch there that seems pretty easy in the middle with Detroit, Buffalo, and Seattle. But yeah, I'm very excited for this game tomorrow night. I don't want to say Vancouver's like world beaters, but they obviously won the division last year, 100 plus points. They're great. They're a good team. So, I mean, there's been questions obviously with the Kings team that we were talking about throughout this entire start of the season. Is like, okay, well, they're winning games, getting points, they haven't beat anybody. They're coming off a really solid back-to-back where they have 2 of the best performances of the season, playing good teams in Nashville. I mean, whatever the record is, it's still a pretty good team. And Minnesota, who hadn't lost in regulation at home yet. So, yeah, okay, so there's that evidence for everybody who's kind of questioning this team so far. But now that you have Vancouver coming in, I feel like this will kind of give us like, okay, like, it's still early, obviously, but is this like team for real? Like, can they compete with Vancouver? It's only the first matchup of the season between the 2 teams, but I'm excited to see how they fare against a solid Canucks team.
Yeah, this would be a good little test. And I agree. You look at the schedule ahead. You mentioned the Detroit, Buffalo, Seattle. The game after that is at San Jose. And the game before that little stretch, against Detroit, it's Colorado, and that's a banged up Colorado team right now. So, yeah, I mean this is not a bad schedule, and it ends with Anaheim, and then Ottawa's playing some 500 hockey right now. They're no slouch, but it's a schedule in November where they could pick up some points.
The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, though, at home to Winnipeg.
Yep.
The return of Gabriel Velarde. I am very excited for that game. I know for Kings fans that went to that one, and Velarde got his revenge last year.
He had 3. Did he have a hat trick, or was it just 3 points?
I think he had 3 points, 2 goals and an assist, I believe. But yeah, and the way Winnipeg's playing right now too, they just look unreal. Kyle Connor, looks so good. Ehlers, everybody's kind of off to a hot start. Filardi's actually off to a slower start maybe than the others, but even then, like with how those games kind of went last year between these two teams, that's gonna be a fun one. I'm looking forward to that one.
Well, we got a lot of hockey to be played. Kings are playing some good minutes here. As always, you can find our articles here at hockeyroyalty.com being posted daily. All your prospect news coming from Kyle Garcia there. You can follow us all of our Twitter handles scrolling across the bottom. But if you're listening in your car, please don't follow us on Twitter until you park. But it's at hockey_royalty, at JW Paterino, at NHL Russell, at Rando Commando 24. You can still buy our shirts. Shirts are available for you guys. We have the deal right now for Let Kev Be Kev t-shirts is $20. Size is small through XXL. You can get the Trevor Moore and Kev combo for $38. All orders go through at NHL Russell. So follow him on Twitter, DM him, and he can get your order started there. Man, we got some good hockey coming up. The Kings are looking good. Time to pocket some points going into the end of the season, boys. So time to sound off with the always go Kings go.